Lumen students. It is your Thursday video, and I just thought it would be appropriate, since I'm going to be telling some stories during this video and reading to you, that I be by a roaring fire with Christmas stockings. It just seems to go along with the time of year, doesn't it? We're going to finish up the 7 Wonders of Sarsaparilla Springs today and start my new read aloud, which is going to be a Christmas story that I wanted to share with you. The 7 Wonders of Sarsaparilla Springs, Eben has found his seventh wonder. It was the little carvings that Uncle Half made, if you remember. And this is day 9, change of plans. Aunt Pretty was so anxious to hear what I was up to, she pestered me all through dinner to tell her the story. When I finally told her and Pa about Uncle Alf, she was even more interested, especially after I said he'd asked about her. I never knew Alfred carved that little village. That would be something to see. Aunt Pretty sat on the edge of her rocker, and hands were still for once. Alfred? You call him Alfred? I was amazed. Goodness, I've known him my whole life, Aunt Pretty said. I never saw that little village, though. Why don't you call on him, Pretty? I recall you two were friendly at one time, Pa suggested with a sly grin. I think I'll do that, Aunt Pretty declared. I'll bake him an apple pie. I'll bet it's been years since Alfred had a homemade apple pie. It's a rough road to his house, I warned her. You'd have to be a mule to make it. Aunt Pretty laughed. I've been down plenty of rough roads, Eben, and I'm stubborn as a mule, you know that. I could see she was determined. Wear your blue dress when you go, I suggested. I like that dress. My aunt's face turned pink. I'm just going to see the carvings, but maybe I'll see if that dress is clean. She started to go inside and then came right back. I got so caught up in hearing about Alfred, I forgot I had something important to tell you, Eben. What? I went down and made a long-distance telephone call today, she announced proudly. That got my attention, since we didn't have a phone. The locals all went to Younts General to make their calls. Hiram charged him a pretty penny to do so, but long distance? I called Cousin Lottie in St. Louis. She's our second cousin on my mother's side. She worked for some rich folks there till she got married. Now she's got a house in the city and a couple of kids younger than you, Eben. Anyway, she said she'd be plain delighted to have you visit her week after next. Says she misses having kinfolk around. I couldn't believe the words coming out of Aunt Pretty's mouth. I haven't seen Lottie in years, not since the funeral, said Pa, lowering his voice at the thought of my mother's passing. I remembered Cousin Lottie, big and friendly, with braids that wound around her head like friendly snakes. St. Louis, I half whispered. Can I go, Pa? Well, if your aunt went to all the trouble of making a phone call, I should say so. I can hire Buck Fielding to work for a couple of days. He's always happy to earn a little extra. So there it was. St. Louis, Missouri? There had to be some wonders of the world there. Why, they'd already had a World's Fair. And there were tall buildings and a zoo, museums and cathedrals, and even the mighty, muddy Mississippi River with a famous bridge across it. A fellow who'd been to St. Louis would never be the same again. The next morning I woke up to the smell of apples and cinnamon drifting through my window. By the time I got downstairs for breakfast, Aunt Pretty was covering an apple pie with a towel. I saw that she was wearing her blue dress, freshly washed and ironed, and there was a brand new band of crocheted lace around the collar. I thought I'd mosey on down to Alfred's early, she explained. He could have some pie for breakfast. Maybe you ought to take along your clothespin people, Pa suggested. Not this time. Not yet, she said mysteriously. Then Pa did something else shocking. He offered her a ride in the pickup. No thanks, I'll enjoy the walk, Aunt Pretty told him. Say howdy for me, Pa said. You look mighty nice. My stars, hard as it was to believe, as my aunt traveled down the road, she did look real nice. And if my aunt was actually pretty, well, that might be another wonder of Sarsaparilla Springs. Looks like Alf Dee's gonna get your aunt's apple pie at last, said Pa, as he watched her walk away. You could have knocked me over with a feather. You mean he was one of the ones who lost out to Holt? Pa just winked his answer. Maybe Uncle Alf was carving up a wedding scene right now. After all, like Pa said, Aunt Pretty was still in her prime. Maybe Uncle Alf was going to be somebody's uncle after all, and maybe that somebody would be me. I hayed with Pa most all the morning. That's a happy tune, Pa said, as he tossed a pitchfork of hay up in the wagon, where I was waiting to spread it out. I hadn't even noticed I was whistling.
Later, I laughed out loud when I gazed up at Old Redhead Hill. From up there on the wagon, if you looked a certain way, the two houses on the hill appeared to be a pair of eyes staring out from under a mop of red hair. I never noticed that before, I told Pa. He chuckled. Depends on your point of view. While Pa ate his lunch, I grabbed my sandwich and gobbled it down on the way to Jeb's house. I couldn't wait a second longer to tell him the news. He was out in the cornfield eating lunch with his brothers and sisters and his Pa. He ran up to meet me. I heard you're going to St. Louis, he greeted me. Lucky you. I wanted to know how on earth he could know that before I told a soul. Everybody knows it. Your Pa told Buck Fielding, and it spread from there. Say, Hiram Yount went to St. Louis once and said they've got streetcars going down the middle of the street that run on an electric wire. They set off sparks everywhere like red-hot snowflakes. Red-hot snowflakes? Now that's a wonder I didn't want to miss. I worked extra hard the next week, maybe because I was hoping Pa would miss me when I was gone. I already knew I'd miss him. On the afternoon before I left, Sal stretched her legs and looked up at me, hopeful-like. I could see she was itching to go searching for more wonders. We're finished with all that now, I told her, but she just wagged her tail. I guess it won't hurt to keep looking, I said, as she led me out to Yellow Dog Road and to more wonders of Sassafras Springs. It was sunny the Saturday morning I left. My new clothes felt stiff and strange after a summer spent in overalls, but they looked fine thanks to Aunt Pretty, and thanks to Pa I had some folding money in my pocket. With tears welling up in her eyes, my aunt gave me a lunch bucket to take on the train. I never thought you'd grow up so fast, she said, wiping her eyes with her apron. She tucked one of her crocheted scarves in my pocket. Something for Cousin Lottie. Don't worry, Aunt Pretty, I'll be back. I'll always come back to see you. Pa climbed into the front seat of the pickup, and Aunt Pretty slid in next to him. Sal and I jumped in the open back with my new suitcase, a gift from Uncle Alf. I believe you'll give it quite a bit of use, he told me. As the truck coasted down Yellow Dog Road, I was surprised to see so many people out. Violet and Yulie Rowan, carrying their baskets of herbs, paused to wave to me. As we passed the Austins, I didn't see Jeb, but his brothers and sisters were all sitting on the fence waving. Pa honked the horn. Further down the road, I saw Coley Pone shaking his moth-eaten hat in our direction. Up on the hill, Mayor Peavy stopped plowing in his field to wave his big straw hat. And there were others just waiting by the side of the road. The Bowie brothers and Piggy Ellis, Buck Fielding and Leslie Mull. When we reached town, Lily Saylor stood on her porch, waving a white handkerchief at me, and she had roses pinned in her hair. It was like I was riding in a big parade, but I was the only attraction that day. Pa stopped to fill up at the gas pumps in front of the general store, and Hiram Yount was panting a bit as he rushed outside to help. So you're going after all, he said. I always knew you'd find those wonders, Eben. Yep, I always believed in you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a jawbreaker. On the house, boy. It'll last you all the way to St. Louis. A gift from Yount's General. A second later, Ray Ellen Hubbell's head popped up over the side of the truck. Will you tell them about my wonderful in St. Louis, she asked. Maybe so, I said, which seemed to please her. Pa started the pickup, and we turned onto the county road, waving to the small crowd that had gathered at the crossroads. Right about then, Kooky Jackson shimmied up the county road signpost to shout us goodbye. Watch out for cyclones, I heard him call. My heart thumped hard in my chest. I'm leaving Sassafras Springs now, I told Sal. I'm going to St. Louis. All of a sudden, there was Jeb running alongside the truck. With those long legs of his, he could almost keep up. Send me a postcard, he yelled. I will. I hope you go to a baseball game. He tossed something to me. Here, catch. What I caught was a dried-up hedge apple. Jeb was pretty sly. He knew I couldn't look at a hedge apple without thinking of him. I tucked it in my pocket near that folding money. Maybe there was enough to bring back a real baseball for Jeb. See you soon, I told him. The truck picked up speed, and Jeb was left in the dust, still waving. Sassafras Springs seemed as tiny as the town on Uncle Alf's dining room table. See you soon, I said aloud, even though Sal was the only one listening. I guess Columbus and Balboa told their friends the same thing when they started out on their big journeys. See you soon. So I think one of the great things about that story is how Eben learned to appreciate his own hometown more than he ever had before. Yes, he's excited to go to St. Louis and see new things, but he appreciates where he came from and the people that are around him. I hope you had that same experience this Thanksgiving.
that you learned to really, really appreciate your family. Maybe you asked for some stories. Maybe you heard some wonderful stories about some of the things that have happened in your family. I hope that you will appreciate all the awesome things around you and some of the stories you go looking for them. So thank you, students, for listening, and we'll continue with some more storytelling next week as I share a few more Christmas stories with you. Thank you so much.